This is Gemara Menachos Daf Pei Ches, and we're holding on Pei Zayin Amid Beis at the Mishnah on the bottom of the Amid as we continue learning about the different midos, the different measurements. We just discussed the midos belach on the previous Mishnah, and now we discuss the midos. We discussed the midos biyavesh in the previous Mishnah. Now we discuss the midos belach, the measurements for liquids. Says the Mishnah, Sheva midais shalach hayu b'mikdash. There were 7 measurements for liquids. Hin v'chatzi ahin, u'shlishis ahin, u'revias ahin. Hin, half, third, and quarter. Lug, chatzi lug, u'revias a lug. And that's our 7. Rav Lezer Rav Tzaddik Aimer, Shenasa Zayabahin. There were markings, lines, measurement markers on the hin. Adkan lepar. This is the measurement for the par. Adkan la'ayil. Adkan lekeves. Rav Shimon Aimer, Lo yusham him. Says Rav Shimon, no, I disagree. There was no hin measurement at all. Because what would a hin serve? It was a larger measurement of a lug and a half. Shebaya maidi leminchas kain gadol. Imagine for the minchas kain gadol. Lugu mechsa babayker. Lugu mechsa bein harabayim. And of course, Rashi over here shows us a beautiful picture of this measuring utensil. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol. If you look at the first Rashi in the Mishnah, he explains that there weren't 4 midas according to Rav Tzadok. Rather, it was just one with measurements that account for par, account for ayil, etc., etc. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanon, Sheva midai shalachaya b'mikdash. Says the Brisa, mimicking the words in our Mishnah, and of course, we'll mimic the Mishnah and then elaborate. There were 7 measurements of lach in the Beis HaMikdash. Revius halog, chatzi halog, v'log. V'revius ayin, u'shlishis ayin, v'chatzi ayin, v'hin. That's the 7, Divi Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir Omer, 2 lines from the bottom. Hin, v'chatzi ayin, shlishis ayin, revius ayin, log. V'chatzi alog, revius alog. Shimon Omer leisham him, v'chimaya v'mishamish. Because what would the hin do for us? Esmi avitach. So what do we bring in its place so that to make sure we have these requisite 7 utensils? Explains Rav Shimon. You know what we bring in its place? We have, sorry, just cleaning up over here. We have on the top line of Bechas Amid Aleph. We have Smi Evitachtav Elamidi is here Shalagu Mechsa Yisasham Shabayam Baidil Chaviti Kain Gadol Mechsa Babai Kirlu Mechsa Bein Arbaim. So that was basically a summary of the words in our Mishnah. Continues the Gemara. Amrulai. Amrulai. Starbanan said to Rav Shimon, Chatzi Alog Yisasham Efshir Lishaer. Bechatzi Alog. Is it possible to measure a lug and a half using the half lug? Why do you need to have a separate measurement of a lug and a half? It's like saying I have a half a cup measurement. The recipe calls for a cup and a half. Oh, I need a new measuring tool of a cup and a half. Why? Take your half a cup and take 3 of them. So Amr Lehem, Rav Shimon responds, Af l'divreichem. Even according to you, chatzi a lug v'lug, lo yaseh revius. You have a chatzi a lug. And no, the opposite. Why? Because Revius says Hashem, you had a Revius. So to put 2 Revius, get a half, 4 Revius, get a whole. Ella, so says Rav Shimon, what must be the reason that we have numerous kelim? Ella, the reason is Kli shemeshamish midazu and meshamish midachares. Each kli is used for its measurement, and we don't take the half lug in order to get a full lug. We don't take a quarter lug to get a half lug, etc. Continues the Gemara of Ma'ika asks the Gemara right after the two dots, 8 lines down, 10 lines down. Ma'ika ben Rameir le Rabbi Yehuda. What is the difference? They both seem to say the same thing if we were to look back at the list carefully. Just in a different order. Amar Rav Yechram b'Yerutze midois ika ben. Now you know what the difference is? This difference is when you have a little bit above the keeping measurements, a little bit above the rim. According to Rabbi Yehuda, who lists the list of the kelim from smallest to largest, Kosavar, Beirute Hamidais, Niskachu, he held that the Berutze, the little bit extra, is Niskachu. Revius, Yavle Rachman Moshe. And Moshe, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to Moshe Revius. V'amar lei, Shayer, Dekayah Berutzim. And he said, evaluate other measurements. They contain a little bit of the excess. That's according to Rabbi Yehuda. Leman Damar, according to Rabbi Meir. Lemal Lematam. Largest to smallest, Kasavar. Berutzim Mitzah, Loinis Gachu. V'in Yav Le'Rachmana, Le'Moshe. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to Moshe Rabbeinu the hin. V'amar lein said to him, Shayr Baha, Kanavki Berutzim. Use this so that there will not be any overflow and be excluded. So the difference going up and going down are going to be, how do you get to either the largest measurement or the smallest measurement? Are we coming to include the little bit of excess or not? Pshat number 1. Pshat number 2. That was Rabbi Yechanan's pshat in the chilik between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Comes Abaye Amar, no. Tkule midois, ikala meimar, niskacho, vikameim eloi niskacho. V'hocha b'miluim kam mifligi. Says Abaye a completely different machlokes. Again, in as much as Rabbi Yochanan said they argue about Beirutze midois, this little bit of excess. Says Abaye mimanashach. The Beirutze midois, we can either say niskacho or we can say eloi niskacho. It's not our conversation. So what is our conversation? Says Abaye, you know what the conversation is? V'hocha b'miluim. The debate over here is with regarding the miluim that the Torah says. Man tamar milmalamata, according to Rameir, that says we go from largest to smallest. Kosavar, he holds miluim shlo yachsar v'shlo yoisar. He held that when the Torah says miluim, you know what the word miluim filled means? You cannot subtract. You cannot add anything. Has to be precisely, exactly full. And the way to do that is to utilize the hin measurement. According to Rabbi Yehuda, miluim means shal yachzer havel yoiser. You always have a little bit more. It's still miluim, karina, and that's not going to be a problem. So that's 2 ways of Yechon Abaye how to learn the machlekes. Says the Gemara. Amar Mar. Says Mar, which we're going back in the Bryce or going back in the Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon Aimer, smack in middle of the Amid, the first word in line is Shimon. Rabbi Shimon Aimer, lo hayusham hin, lo hayushan hip, lo hayusham hin. There was not a hin in the base of Mikdash. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, says the Bryce. So why? Because if Shimon Tainas, what's the purpose of the hin? Says the Gemara. Shabir come to Shimon Rabbanan. Shimon has a kutta taina. So how do they respond? Why do they count the hin? The Rabbanan have a hin. Shabir come to Rav Shimon Rabbanan. The Rabbanan have a hin. Daven Moshe l'Shemen HaMishcha. According to the Rabbanan, you know you have the hin. We have the hin for the Shemen HaMishcha that Moshe Rabbeinu created. It said Shemen Zayis hin. So says the Gemara, let's understand this. Mar Savar, Rav Shimon holds, Kivan Diladai Rais Loyave Tzarech. You don't need this measurement for Dairais Lishave Davdi Vignas. So then Moshe Rabbeinu made Vihin, he utilized it, and then he hid it away. What do I need it for again? Vedach, and according to other man Amrim, according to Rameir of Yehuda, Kivan Dehave, Have. So they still had that measurement. Amar Mar. Vesmi avidachtov loisagia deloi me'ayol. What measurement should I bring in its place? Is it not enough that would it be insufficient if I brought another one that's debated in the Mishnah, whether I could take the Revi'as, two of them as a half, whether I could take a half, two of them as a whole? Kedamer Ravina, Gemiri, as Ravina taught, we have an oral tradition, we have a Messiah, Shtei Semichos B'Sibor. There are two types that we need Semicha by a carbon Sibor. Meaning the Gemara is explaining the Mishnah seemed to have been infatuated by the number 7. And therefore, when we subtracted one, we needed to add one. Where does 7 come from? Says the Gemara. Halacha l'maisha misin. Sadik Aimer, Shnasai behen v'leslei sheva midais. The leslei sheva midais. Leslei. V'baisema. Mai sheva midais. Sheva mididois. You're right. We meant it according to Rav Shimon. Excuse me, Rav Tzadok. You might have 7 separate kalim, says the Gemara. We can have 7 measurements due to these incremental markings, and that is how he'll fulfill the Sheva Midas according to the second Shita, second Lashon. First Lashon is he argues with the whole Sheva Midas. Says the Gemara, Ravias mehaisa mishameshes. What does a Ravias do for us? Mishnah at the bottom of Biches Amid Aleph. Ravias Mayim for the Mitzayra, Limitzayra Ravias Shaman Lenazir. Chetzi Lug Mayim Shamesh. Chetzi Lug Mayim Lesaita. Chetzi Lug Shaman Oil Letaida. Ubelug. Hayamaide Lechola Menachos for all the Menachos in the lug. I feel a mincha shel samach isaroin. Even a mincha of 60 isaroin of flour. Nice in law, samach lug. Los ben Yaakov Aimer, if you mincha shel samach isaroin in la ella luga. One lug, shenamber the mincha of a lug, shemen, shisha lapar, var belayol, shlish lekavesh, shlish lemechsel, menayra, chatzi lug, lechol ner. So there's always one lug that doesn't change. The Mishnah concludes that shisha lugin is for the carbon and for the par, arba is for an ayol, shlish for the keves, 3.5 is for the menayra, and half a lug is for each and every ner. Says the Gemara, Yosef Rebbe v'kokashali. Revi'as lamanim shecha. Why was the Revi'as measurement anointed? If you're going to tell me we need the Revi'as measurement for the Mitzayra, Chotzu. The Mitzayras, the quantities are measured by Chutz Beis HaMikdash, outside, and therefore, why would I need to use a Kli Shares with water with Kedusha? There should be no reason for that. V'nazir, Lechem Nazir B'Shchitas, Ayolu Dekadish. The bread of the Nazir is Kedusha only with the Lechem Nazir B'Shchitas Ayolu Dekadish, only with the Shchita of the Ayel and not earlier. And therefore, before then, whatever's put in doesn't need Kedusha. So, Nachamol, why does the Kli need to have Kedusha? Amar le Rav Chia, Sheva Hayamaide lechavite kain gad Sheba, that with it they would use it for the chavite kain gadol. Ravi Hashem l'chol chala v'chala kari alei me'eretz merchak ish asasi, and they read the pasuk upon Rebbe. Rebbe said this pasuk about Rav Chia, that me'eretz merchak, from a distant land. Ish Atzasi, of someone with an Eitzah. Rav Chia came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, and Rebbe's expressing how Rav Chia, who came from Bavel, was able to answer the kasha appropriately. Chatzi alug mayim shamish, 5 lines down. Mechazem in beis Yosef Rebbe v'kakashi le chatzi lug lama nimshach. Why does a chatzi lug have to be nimshach? Isaitav chichulinhu. If it's for the Saita, chulin hu detzrichli kedushi, something that is chulin doesn't need kedusha. Mayim kedoshim ksiv, says the boss. The kohen takes the mayim kedoshim, the holy waters, and the kiyar. So what do we see? The water already had kedusha. So what are you being? You don't need a kli to be mekadesh the mayim. Itaida lachmei taida v'shchitas taida udekachi. So Amar Rav Shimon Berebi shabayim achalek. You know what they needed it for? They were mechalik the chatzi log shemen l'chol ner v'ner. Amar loy ner Yisrael, light of Yisrael kachaya. Givaldik, you like that. Amar Rabbi Yechon, Amar Rabbi, 4 lines from the white lines. Ner Shekavsa, a ner that went out early. Nidashein Hashemen, they would clean out the oil. Nidashna Psila, they would clean out the wick. Ketzad Oisa. Or actually, to be more precise, not here doesn't mean nidashein, they would clear it out. Here it means nidashein if it became filled with ash, or if the wick itself had turned to ash. What do we do? Ketzad Oisa, says the Gemara. They clean it out, put new oil in it, and light it. Ketzad Oisa, what do you do? Metiva v'noisim b'shemen. What you do is you clean it out, you put in new oil, umadlika, and you light it. Says the Gemara, Yosef Rav Zrika. Rav Zrika was sitting, and he was asking, which of course, let's just parenthetically point out the fascinating discussion where Samak middle of Menachos, middle of Midais world, different measurements, and we're learning about the Menorah. It's one of those things to store away. So says the Gemara, as we move over to the first white line, when they refill the menorah with oil, how much oil is it? Is it the original quantity, a chatzi lug, or is it as much as is missing now? So says the Gemara in the first white line, Amar Rav Yirmiyah, Pshita de Kamida Rishayna. Why? Di Kamasha Chasra, Menayadin, how do we know how much is lacking? My Chiser. How do you know how much is less? Maybe you're going to tell him you guesstimate. Imkain, Sheva Midas. You tell me the 7 Midas. Navshal Midas Taivais. You need to have more Midas. Navshal Midas Tuva, excuse me. Why? Because you have to make sure that you can fill it up. So Kari Alei, Rav Zrika said about Rav Yirmiyah Vaderech Salach. And with your splendor, Vadarcha, and your Hadar, and your splendor, Tzlach, should be successful. Rachav al Dvar Emes, riding on for the sake of truth. Va'anva Tzedek, and righteous humility. Itmarnami, similarly on the fourth white line. Amar Rav Avu, Amar Rav Yechon, Amar Ilah, Amar Rav Abba, Amar Rav Chanina, Amar Rebbe. Ner shekavsa nidashein Hashem, you clean it, and the oil became ash. Nidash psila. Ketzad says we have a brayse here corroborating what we just said. Mativa v'neisa b'sheven kemida rishayna umatzlika. Amar Avuna b'rei Rav Yehuda Amar Rav sheisha. So that proves that it's kemida rishayna. Continues the Gemara. Let's go a little bit deeper into the Menorah once we're on the topic. Amar Avuna b'rei Rav Yehuda Amar Rav sheisha. 8 lines into my line. Ner shemikdash al parakim have. The ner, the Menorah, the lamp of each part of the Beis Hamikdash was made of different parts. Kasavar, Kiksiv Kikaru Meksheh, Amanera, Benerisel, Kisev. Rav Sheshes holds that the Torah says Kikar hammered out. It's about the Menorah and its lamps. And therefore the lamps were part and parcel of the Menorah itself, and he couldn't be moved Bechlal. Now we needed to clean it. He loved the Barakim Have, Lovim if the lamp was not able to be moved around, or not able to be cleaned. So how are you able to take this giant menorah and be able to clean it out if you can't move down the arms to get inside? How would you be able to clean it? And therefore, that's why we have to learn it's one piece, but the tops were able to be bent. Says the Gemara, Meisel, I'll ask you a kasha. Why do you clean it out? You remove the lamps from the menorah, and you put it in the oil mite. And you scrub it out with a sponge. And you put in oil and you light them. So what do we say? We see from here that your mom is taking off, each arm of the candelabra, each arm of the menorah is coming off. Answers the Gemara, he also like the following Tanya, the Tanya went in a brayse. They would not move it from its place. We have a machlokes. Says the Gemara, Machaldi Bailila Zuzah Mitzi Mazizla. It sounds like if you wanted to move the lamp, you're allowed to move it. But that can't be. I'll tell you, never would move it. Uman Chachamim, this is Rav Elazar. Who are the Chachamim? This is Rav Elazar, who did Tanya. Rav Elazar, Rav Sadiq Oimer, Kimin Tashel Zav Ayulal Gabba. there was a golden plate on top of each and every lamp of the menorah. Shumeitiva, when you clean out the menorah, he would push his plate toward the top. And when he put in oil, he would push the plate towards the top. And then the actual part was never moved, meaning he was able to go up and down to allow them to clean it out and refill it with menorah. Says the Gemara, but we just said, we have a machlekes, says one Bryce, the menorah and the lamps come from the kikar, the tongs and the scoops do not. Not each and every lamp, bois min hakikar. Says the Gemara, Maika mifligi, Baikra mifligi, to machlekes how the darshan of pasuk 10 lines from the bottom, the tiny kikars of Tahar. Yasa Isa, Lamanu, we learn the Menayer Shabbat, Menakikar, Menan the Rabbis Neiro Isa, Tamlemer is called Hakilim Oila, Yachash and Imarav Malkacha Machto Isa, Tamlemer Isa. Of course, it's the first sheet of the Rav Nechemia. Kasha, Dram Nechemia, Tritanai, Valiba, Dram Nechemia, was a Shubin Karcha, Menayer Ba Menakikar. Just the Menayer comes from the Kikar. Vemakocha Machzani, Rizal, Boys Menakikar. Ramani Mekayim is called Hakilim, what we do second pasuk. Shekilim Shalzav. That the kelim were of gold. Says Imar Zav. But it's explicit. You see, there is a shava allows the yourself a air call. El Iver Panel Zav Tar. So I need another drasha. So concludes the Gemara Loi Nitzercha Ella Lefi Neiros. The top, the mouth of the Neiros also has to be made out of gold. Why? I would have thought the tops get black. Maybe the Torah cares about the moment of Klal Yisrael. Why make it gold if it's going to get dirty? And therefore, you should put whatever type of gold. It shouldn't be from the Zav Tar. Kamashlan, the extra. Al Kol HaKelim teaches us they also have to be made out of Zav Tar, even though they're going to get dirty. Fascinating discussion of the Menorah. Pick it up on the top of Peitzas Amid Aleph for the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.